Good day to all of you. My name is Regine Eldarapan, your friendly online teacher in oral communication. This is one of the core subjects in the senior high school. And since this is an English subject, I expect everyone to speak in English too. So I have to impose the English only policy or EOP. Today, as we start our journey in this subject, we begin with the nature and elements of communication. But before we proceed, I want to tell everyone to focus and be attentive in the next slides because at the end of this lesson, we have to explain the functions, nature, and process of communication. Now, let us start knowing our main lesson. Let us start by defining what is communication. Don't you know that the word communication came from the Latin word communicare, which means to share? Yes, you heard it right. And what are the things that we usually share? Of course, some ideas, opinions, or reactions, or any thoughts that you just want to share, whoever that you're talking to. As we move forward with our lesson, let us explore the nature of communication. So, this is the first example, or this is the example of the first nature of communication. As you can see, this is how communication is basically done. It involves the three basic components for an effective flow of communication. We have here the speaker, the message, and the receiver. With these three, we can say that there is a process of communication, and that is the first nature of communication. This slide represents the next nature of communication. As you can see there, it shows that speaker delivers a message which was responded by the receiver in a form of a feedback. Therefore, we can say that this communication is interactive. But it can only be interactive if there is a continuous response between the speaker and the receiver. As you can see there at the center, there is like a circle that keeps on cycling. That represents the interaction of these two characters that you see on your screen. And remember, it can only be continuous. It can only be interactive, rather, if there is a continuous response between the speaker and the receiver. Now, in this slide, we have nodding, waving, frowning, and shouting. Obviously, these gestures or actions or facial expressions that you see on your monitor now can convey message. This nature of communication is said to be symbolic. For the information of everyone, there are two forms of communication. We have verbal and nonverbal communication. When you say verbal, this is communication that is in a form of words, whether it is written or spoken. Like by saying, I love you. We can say it in a face to face interaction, or we can also say it in a form of a letter. But when you say nonverbal communication, this is the time that we use our actions, our facial expressions, or facial, facial expressions, or even the gestures that we show to someone. And this is said to be symbolic. And these symbols or cues that we provide can convey message or can give the message more meaningful. And this is the last nature of communication. And if you'd like to search, there are lots of nature of communication. But I just like to put it in three because this is the most, or these are the most important natures of communication. Let's proceed. We have said a while ago that communication is dynamic in its process, and in order for us to understand the flow of communication, which will be discussed later on, we have to know the first. We have to know first the different variables that helps or create communication. These are the elements of communication. Now, according to research, there are five. according to research, there are five basic elements of communication, but generally speaking, there are nine elements that we have to know. We have here the speaker, the message, encoding, decoding, receiver, feedback, context, and barrier. And remember, you have to listen carefully because you cannot understand the process or the flow of communication later on without understanding, without knowing these ingredients, right? Under communication. Now, what is speaker? Speaker, this is the source of information or the message. Like in this context or situation that we have now, who is the speaker? Obviously, it's me because I'm the teacher and I'm the one who provide information to everyone. Okay, how about the message? It is the information, ideas, or thoughts conveyed by the speaker in words, which is the verbal, or in actions, which is non-verbal. Now, in this context now, the message is the lesson that I am delivering at this moment. How about encoding? It's the process of converting the message into words, actions, or other forms that the speaker understands. So, meaning to say, before the message will be transmitted to the receiver, the speaker here now will try to understand first what to say. And that process is what we call encoding. Fourth, we have channel. It's the medium or the means, such as personal or non-personal, verbal or non-verbal. Here in channel, we make full use of our senses, most especially if we are talking in a face-to-face interaction. Like we use our mouth when we speak, we use our ears to listen. Okay, we try to make full use of our sense of touch if we would like to feel something or if you would like to let someone feel something. Okay, that's channel, but there's also another form of a channel, like in this context that we have now. We try to convert our message or we try to transmit our message through in what form? Maybe of our mobile phones, of our laptop, with of course the connection or with the internet connection. That is also can be called a channel. We have decoding here. Decoding, it is the task already of the receiver. A while ago we have said that encoding is the task of the speaker, but in this time now, or this element now, which is decoding, it is the task of the receiver, wherein before the message will be transmitted, the receiver will try to understand also what is the message that was transmitted. Okay, how about feedback? It is the response uh, by the receiver or whoever provided the information, because a feedback cannot only be it cannot only be given by the receiver, it can also be done by the speaker. Okay, so this can be a form of a reaction, response, or information provided by whoever would like to speak. Okay, so how about context? Context, it's just the environment or the idea. Context can be an idea or can also be a form of an environment. Like now, supposedly, if without pandemic, we are in a classroom, we are supposed to be at school, specifically in a classroom. That is the physiological context. But when you say psychological context, this is the perfect example. Like I know that you are now in your own homes, and I am here in my office, and we are trying to imagine that we are in a classroom because we are having class. So that's the context. Now, the last here is what we call the barrier. The barrier is just simply the factor that affect the flow of communication, like the noise, the emotion that you are feeling at that very moment, the use of jargon, lack of confidence, or lack of confidence. And these barriers will be discussed later part, okay? Now, as what I promised, we will be understanding now the flow of communication. Now, as what you can see in the diagram, the sender always starts the flow of communication. Before the speaker starts to speak, he or she first generates an idea. The speaker starts to encode an idea or converts the idea into words or actions. Then the speaker transmits or sends out a message through any form of a channel. When the speaker, when the receiver gets the message, the receiver decodes or interprets the message based on the context. Right after the message is decoded, it is the time now that the speaker sends or provides feedback. But if we talk about the communication being interactive, a feedback can be a form of, a feedback can be, can cycle between the sender and the receiver. A receiver can provide a feedback. Usually, it's the receiver who usually starts provide feedback, and a sender can also give a feedback right afterwards. So, for you to understand this much better, let's take a look at the example in the next slide. So, as what you can see there, on the left side, that is the process, and on the right side, there is the example or the sample of the communication or the flow of communication. First, Daphne loves Rico, her suitor, as a friend. That's how usually it starts. She thinks of how to tell him using their native language. Okay, that's the encoding part. Now she tells him, Rico, mahal kita bilang kaibigan. There's the time now that the speaker transmits or sends out the message. Now Rico hears what Daphne says, so he already received the message. He tries to analyze what she means based on the context and their relationship, and he is heartbroken. So this is the time now that he tried to decode or interpret the message, and through nonverbal cues, he just frowned and does not say something because he is in pain. That is already the feedback of the communication. Okay, so that is just simply the process of communication. So do you imagine now? We were just trying to talk every time, but if we try to dissect, can we call it dissect, or understand little by little, we really know that there is really a process of communication. Now, let's continue understanding the functions of communication. But before we begin, let's tick off our checklist. We've discussed the nature of communication, and we've delved deeper into its process by getting to know the various elements. Now, it's time that we understand what communication's purpose really is. According to Maestro 2019, there are five major functions of communication. These are control or regulation, we have social interaction, motivation, emotional expression, and we have information dissemination. Let's take a look, recording. Let's take a look the first one, regulation. Let's take a look uh, at the first one. We have regulation or control. So when you say the first function performs the very specific and definite purpose to regulate or control the behavior of the receiver. This comes in various forms as negotiation, like eat your vegetables first, then you can have dessert. As a command, you can say, she's upset, go talk to her. or as a request. Like for example, will you please close the door on your way out? So that's control or regulation. The second function of communication we have here is social interaction. It is the process, it is used to form bonds or connections with others. When you want to know more about someone or you initiate a conversation, like for example, it's nice to see you. How are you feeling today? So you find ways to prolong conversations like you can also say, I'm having a great time with you today. Let's sit down for a bit. Or simply create a way for a conversation to happen. You could say, let's hang out. Can I buy you a cup of coffee? So that is social interaction. You can talk to your friend, or you're just simply talking to your friends, family members, or some strangers, you know. So the third function of communication is motivation. It works either when you want to encourage or motivate others. Like you can say, "You're doing a great job building that cement wall. I don't think I've ever seen anyone so talented." Or when you just want to encourage or motivate yourself. Like for example, "I need to keep eating healthy food so I can feel good and live a long life." More often than not, it is our motivation that causes us to learn how to properly express our needs, okay, and desires so the others may understand how to help us see they are fulfilled. Second to the last is the what we call information dissemination. It's rather self-explanatory, but let's take a look at anyway. Every day of our lives, we use language to either gain or share information, whether we are giving directions or asking for them, writing a novel, following a recipe, listening to music, or simply watching other people learn new things. It is just an exchange of information. So simple as that. The last is what we call uh, emotional expression or the ability to facilitate people facilitate people's expressions of their feelings or emotions. For example, you are sharing your frustrations about your schoolwork with parents or with your friend. That is, you're just trying to express something that you just don't like or you just being upset with. So that is the last function. So again, these are the functions of communication. We have control, social interaction, motivation, emotional expression, uh, and we have information dissemination. Review time. We've discussed the nature of communication, and we've just finished delving into the process of communication by getting to know the various elements of communication. And of course, we've also discussed the functions of communication. So, if you do have questions or any clarifications, you can send your questions or queries in our group chat so others can also see it. I have posted in our Google Classroom a question about your learning for that specific topic or specific day or meeting. So I want you to comment your answer below so that I can know if there is something that you want to know as well regarding on that topic. Now, if you see this, this is what they call Google Time. So all you have to do is to access our Google Classroom, and right there you can see the tasks or activities that you have to do. I have also set schedules that you have to do there, so that you have to do on that specific topic. Um, So, yeah, that's all for today. This has been your friendly online teacher in oral communication, Regine Elderopen, saying, raise your flag so high because you are Tatak City High. Class dismissed.